is alive!
Hi guys, my name is Joseph Tapia, and welcome back to a very out-of-the-blue episode of Just Born Movies. I say out of the blue because Cloverfield Paradox was literally dropped in our laps. Kind of like how the Patriots dropped the ball in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened. Anyway, play the trailer.
Whatever you're doing, stop.
Alright, so to give a little backstory to the Cloverfield franchise, 2 years ago, 2016, Cloverfield 10 Lane was released, and it was in production under the name Valencia. And obviously, you can even tell with Cloverfield Paradox that the acquisition of these movies by Bad Robot, they're purchasing movies that may fit into what they want of a franchise, and then adding tie-ins to make the movie fit for them.
Yeah, it's more, you know, that kind of happens a lot in Hollywood, where a film will be written by somebody and then acquired and then turned into a sequel. I believe that happened with something like Die Hard 2. So it's not unheard of, but yeah, that does really seem to be what Bad Robot's doing. Just kind of fits the feeling of what we want the Cloverfield franchise to be, so why don't we make it a Cloverfield movie?
And in 2016, they really, in my opinion, hit it out of the park. John Goodman,
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah, and
I forgot the guy's name. Hey,
anyway.
if you know his name, put it in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. They just outstanding performances all around. I really enjoyed that movie. That was probably one of my favorite movies of 2016.
It was a fine film. It was a nice thriller, real tense, real fun to watch. John Goodman is amazing, and he just kind of proves why he's one of the most underrated actors today. That man should probably have a pile of awards right now, and he does not.
Totally agree. So basically with that film, they've rebranded Cloverfield as this claustrophobic, kind of intense horror thriller genre.
Yeah,
sci-fi kind of.
Yeah, taking it from kind of a
Twilight Zone feel. Almost.
Yeah, or like Blair Witch meets Godzilla, kind of open world, shaky cam, first person. The first one's a fine movie. The second one's much better.
Yeah. So that brings us to Paradox. Now, Paul, what did you think of Paradox?
I think Paradox is okay. I feel like it's going to get a lot more flack than it deserves because it really isn't a strong film. It wants to be a lot of other films. It's obviously trying for Sunshine or Event Horizon or Alien, which are all amazing films. They're some of my favorite films of all time. And you can see where this has taken a lot from that, especially Event Horizon, but it doesn't quite get to the Event Horizon level or even Sunshine. The script's okay. Some of the twists are iffy. The third act's kind of dumb.
I actually enjoyed more than I disliked Paradox. The beginning portions start as very taut, very intense body horror. And toward the middle portions, it starts to get a little bit messy, and then the third act kind of falls apart a bit for me. We're going to get into spoilers now, so if you haven't seen the movie, you have Netflix. Come on. I don't even have Netflix, and I've already seen the movie. So come on. Okay, go see the movie. All right? If not, stick around. So, Paul, let's talk about some of the more complex plot elements of this movie. So it deals with the Earth is having an energy crisis, and you know they have this particle accelerator in space, and they're trying to get renewable.
The particle accelerator, which they call the Shepherd, is so unstable and so unpredictable that they had to build a space station in order to go up and test it so that they didn't wipe out the entire Earth.
Which is called the Cloverfield.
Yeah. So That's where the name Cloverfield comes from.
Mm.
While simultaneously you're watching the main character's husband on Earth, the main character played by Gugu Mbatha Raw, which is actually a fine performance from her. I really enjoy her in this film, but I tend to enjoy her in just about everything she's in. So I may just be a little biased there.
And the cast is pretty stacked.
Yeah,
too.
the cast is really stacked. Gugu Mbatha Raw, Chris O'Dowd, David Oyelowo, Daniel Bruhl,
Yeah.
Elizabeth Debicki. I mean, this cast
Good
is
cast.
not lacking in talent, which is a shame because I feel like this is completely beneath a lot of them. Not to say, once again, it's not that bad a film. It's just when I think of Daniel Bruhl, I think of how good some of the films he's in are.
Yeah.
Films like Inglourious Bastards or Rush,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. Goodbye Lenin, which if you haven't seen, I'm sure a lot of you haven't. It's a German film that I love to death. So you're watching Gugu Mbatha Raw's husband kind of deal with the events of the first Cloverfield, but not really. Like he's there,
Yeah.
but he's kind of removed from the action, and it's really weird. Honestly, that whole side plot could have been dropped, and it would have been just fine.
I was just about to say the portions I liked the least about this movie were the parts on Earth. You lose a lot of the space thriller tension when you cut to Earth, and it really takes away that danger element, that suspense level for me.
And it opens on Earth.
Yeah.
With Gugu Mbatha Raw and her husband sitting in line for gas as power goes out, because like I said, there's an energy crisis about 10 years in the future, roughly. And when the power goes out, they're sitting there talking about this thing that the husband wants her to go do. They don't necessarily tell you, but it's her going into space. So it starts out this nice human element. They make reference to something that had happened and why she needs to escape it, and that she needs to go into space to escape it. And it's a nice moment. It sets up the film well, but after about the first act, somewhere into the second act, it kind of comes off the rails and just goes into some real bland territory.
Yeah, so basically what happens is they fire the particle accelerator and it warps them to a different dimension. And I was thinking in my head watching this movie, oh, I bet you, what'd be pretty cool is if, like, Earth disappeared. Which, guess what happened? Earth disappeared! And I'm like, well, I'm not really a Hollywood screenwriter, so this is kind of a problem, this kind of predictability. So, what's going to happen next? Oh, maybe things start to disappear and reappear in other places? Oh, guess what? Things start to disappear and reappear in other places.
Yeah, and then Elizabeth Debicki's playing a member of the crew from the other dimension. She's part of the crew, but Ji Zhang, who's also in the film, who I didn't mention in the cast, Ji Zhang wasn't part of the crew in the second dimension. So Elizabeth Debicki's play is taking her spot as one of the engineers. So she shows up in kind of a cool way, honestly. Like it's one of the few twists in the film I really like, is that they hear this like moaning coming from the ship, or shrieking or whatever, and they open up a panel, and Elizabeth Debicki's in there with like wires going through her body, and she's just in immense amounts of pain, and it's probably one of the best moments of the film, in a film that doesn't have a lot of great moments.
She was basically warped into the wall. And honestly, I really liked where they were going with this. But as soon as the one downfall with seeing this is that this sets up most of the predictability of how the two dimensions will interact with each other. For instance, there's this is he Russian or yeah
the Russian
the Russian character. He immediately I was like, oh, the gyro is missing. Well, it's got to be in someone's body. Or the worms went missing. Well, guess what? They're in the Russian guy's body as well.
Yeah, so there's a little gyro that kind of runs the shepherd, and They make a big deal of it being what do they call it, like an expensive compass.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives them where they are and all this stuff. And when they get warped and show up in the other dimension, it just goes missing.
Yes. I mean, that moment with Elizabeth Debicki in the wall is really cool, but it sets up a lot of the predictability of the cool things that they're going to do, unfortunately.
Yeah. So then,
and it's not really new territory, so to speak.
Yeah. Like I said, if you've seen Event Horizon, if you've seen Sunshine, everybody starts dying off one by one, or strange things keep happening to them. So the Russian has worms shoot out of his mouth, and he ends up dying. And Chris O'Dowd gets his arm stuck in a wall, and then kind of silly enough, the arm becomes sentient.
There's a scene with them in the hallway, and he's looking at his arm, which is completely like severed from his body. He has no pain whatsoever, and it's crawling toward him, and it's almost reminiscent of the scene in The Thing where after they blast the dude whose like chest is open, and the little spider things crawling around. They're like, what the fuck, man? It's very reminiscent of that.
It is very reminiscent of The Thing.
There's so many like different tones in this movie that you can see what they were going for.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part with this is that there's no logical sense to why the arm becomes sentient.
Yeah.
Because not only does it crawl by itself, but then it has the information for them to go find the gyro in the Russian's body.
Yeah, so apparently it has a brain.
Yeah, so they stick a pen in its hand and it writes out, look in the Russian's body, whatever the Russian's name was, it's not important. Yeah, and it's kind of a silly moment because there's just no explaining it.
Yeah, you can't really explain it because it's not from another dimension. It's actually that person's hand or arm from this dimension. So
and there's no context as to why in the other dimension anybody's arms could just come off and grow a mind of their own. It's really weird.
Paul, what technical stuff did you really like about the movie?
Honestly, it's kind of well edited. It's not too well shot. It looked like an episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Which is fine for Doctor Who, because Doctor Who has a distinct style, but they start going with a lot of Dutch angles, and it's really kind of shallow and glossy looking.
Yeah.
Where I feel this film of this kind should be a little darker and a little grittier looking, so it should look more like it was shot on film and not digital. I don't know. That's probably just me being real specific, but
well, you can kind of tell by watching 10 Lane and then coming to this movie that there's creatively there's kind of an imbalance,
and I feel like the way 10 Cloverfield Lane was shot in the final moments when she finally gets out of the cellar, it is kind of a good setup for how this movie should look.
Yeah,
it's real dark, it's real moody, it's got a real distinct color palette, and it looks real grainy. It doesn't look glossy, so it works a little bit more for that material. As to where this looked, like I said, real glossy, so it kind of looks like a Doctor Who episode or that episode of Black Mirror from the 4th season where they're doing the Star Trek parody. It's a little, it just doesn't work for what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I really like the score. Bear McCreary does the score for this movie. If you've probably heard his music, you just probably don't know it. Walking Dead, he did the opening theme song for that. Mm-hmm. What else has he done? He did.
He does a lot of TV work.
Yeah,
he's a fine composer. I really like what he did with this film.
It really set the mood.
Yeah, and the film kind of ended up failing him. So he makes this nice score that has a lot of tension to it, but by the time you get to the third act, you just don't care anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's such great music. I think the directing is pretty much by the books, I would say.
Yeah, and like I said, he uses a lot of like the old like Batman Dutch angles where they tilt the camera in weird ways. And that sometimes when a film's trying to be a little more serious, that always throws me off when they start doing just like slight tilts.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going for a disorienting feel, if you kind of do a little bit what Fincher did with Alien 3, where he's doing the Dutch angles, but he's also kind of warping the lens to go with it to where it feels disorienting, that could work. But when you're just tilting the camera slightly, it looks dumb.
Yeah. So yeah, shit starts hitting the fan. People are dying. Stuff's exploding. Let's cut to the end. Elizabeth Debicki's character starts killing people for little reason.
Yeah, so Chekhov's gun happens. The Russian manufactures a gun with a 3D printer and threatens to shoot some crew members with it. They wrestle it from him, lock it in a safe. We haven't seen Elizabeth Debicki at this point. Somehow she finds out about it. We don't know how.
It's never explained. She wasn't around when the gun was around.
Yeah,
So how she knows about it?
She knew exactly where it was and how it got there. Now, if they would have said she knew about it because their dimensions Russian did the same thing, that would make sense.
But they never explain it.
But they don't explain it. So she gets it. She shoots the Brazilian crew member, then she shoots Daniel Bruhl, and then goes to shoot Gugu Mbatha Raw's character, and I'm getting weary just thinking about it.
Are you thinking that maybe they'll shoot a window and someone will be sucked into space?
Kind of like Alien Resurrection.
Yeah,
because
you're right.
You're completely right.
Yeah,
that happens.
Yeah. So yeah, she goes back and saves Daniel Bruhl's life, and they fire up the particle accelerator, and they get back to their dimension. Now, let's talk about one of the last shots of the film. So the space station is pretty much destroyed at this point, and there's really no choice but to bring them back down to Earth. So they launch off into escape pod. Now this is the interesting part. During the marketing of this movie, they said that this one would kind of tie things together a little bit. So to understand the ending of this movie, you kind of have to understand the ending of the first Cloverfield movie, in which the last shot of the first Cloverfield movie are the main characters on Ferris wheel overlooking the beach, and out in the water, in the distance you see a small, which the director confirmed is a satellite, fall into the ocean. And this film is supposed to mirror that, in that their escape pod falls down through the clouds into the ocean, and the last shot is the Cloverfield monster rising above the clouds. So a couple problems with that. First off, the Cloverfield monster in the original movie was never that tall, and if you're trying to set this up as if it's the setting of the first Cloverfield, the Cloverfield monster isn't even around at that time in the shot that they're referencing from the first Cloverfield movie, and it's definitely not that tall. So if you're claiming that this movie is going to be a setup for the rest of the franchise, how?
I mean, I guess technically it could be another monster, because I mean, we only see the one in New York.
Who's to say that it's even the same universe? They get a little messy with the rules of the different universes.
Yeah,
they do some cool things with the dimension hopping, but it gets a little muddy because they don't clearly define certain aspects of that dimension hopping, and you know, as a viewer, you're just left with wonder, I guess. So that's the end of the movie, and as a viewer, you're left kind of confused where or how this all ties everything together, especially for the second movie, which deals with an alien invasion, not necessarily creatures coming from interdimensional tear.
Yeah, but here again, I feel those could be interdimensional creatures, kind of like here we go again. I'm just going to be dropping
Speculating.
references everywhere. It could be interdimensional creatures, kind of like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You know, everybody thought those were aliens. They were interdimensional creatures. That could be the case, but the fact that we have to sit here and speculate because they didn't really give you much,
Yeah.
kind of gives you where this film goes, which is kind of nowhere. And again, I don't need everything spelled out for me, but basic plot points would be nice.
Yeah.
And if we're going to try to make a franchise from here, please at least start the next film telling us where they came from at the very least.
That being said, you can give them credit that by not clearing up some of these specifics, that they have a lot of room to play around with. They can essentially do whatever they want because they never really made it clear. You know, they're not limiting themselves with this is this and this is this.
Yeah, at this point, the universe has kind of no rules.
Yeah.
So you can literally do anything and it make some sense because it hasn't made too much sense to this point.
Yeah. And to be honest, I kind of like the feel of the new Cloverfield movies. I like these episodic kind of Twilight Zone-y, you know, movies. I'm enjoying them, even if this is kind of a miss.
Yeah, and I feel that'd be a little bit better if they didn't try to tie this one to the first one so much.
Yeah, yeah. I think the next one they should all just be one-offs.
Yeah.
And just have kind of the same tone, the same feel, same atmosphere.
Yeah, if you're gonna make something look like Black Mirror, just make it feel like Black Mirror.
Yeah.
This could have been its own thing.
Yeah. So, Paul, what are you gonna rate this movie?
No, like I said, it's really silly in parts. It's got a strong cast. It's got some strong technical elements and some weak technical elements. It could have been a lot better. It could have been a lot worse. Honestly, I was leaning toward damn average, but after talking about it a little bit more, I'm going pretty damn bad.
Well, guys, I guess I'm going to have to be the optimist here. I'm going pretty damn average. I think the cast shines with what they got. Some of the technical aspects are really nice. It starts off really well and promising. It just kind of falls apart toward the middle and the latter portions. And not to mention some scenes that are unnecessary on Earth that I feel ruin the tension of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And just not having clarity. So because of those, I'm going to have to give it pretty damn average. So, what did you think of Cloverfield Paradox? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, like, share, comment, hit that little subscribe button to get notifications every time we post. And be sure to check out our other shows, Drinking Age Movies, where Paul and Manny Classic review movies from 21 years ago, and Damn Fine Meats, where Manny Classic makes burgers and sandwiches based off of those movies. And as always,
Stay frosty.